This light's a little blind. I'm good?
Mm-hmm.
All right. If you watched the 2024 X Games, you might have noticed that the Women's League only had one major corporate sponsor. With 16 events, women competed in every one that men did, yet only received one corporate sponsor. Hi, my name is Leela Fallows, and thank you for being here to listen to my TED Talk, where I will be talking about the causes and effects of gender inequality in skiing and snowboarding. You probably already think that this has nothing to do with you and that you don't stay up at night worrying about it. However, for the next 30 minutes, I'm going to make a request that you pretend that this is just as important as the last day of school, because, well, for me, this is very important. Skiing and snowboarding have been a huge part of my life. They've shaped my identity, my friendships, and what I want to do with my future. And coming from a small ski town, I wouldn't be surprised if this wasn't the same for your kids one day. At first, when I started researching my thesis question, it felt very bland. I wasn't sure what direction it would take me, because this is something that is not talked about on social media. I was researching something that strictly came from a personal experience. However, over my research, I found 4 different aspects that affect gender inequality in skiing and snowboarding. The first being implicit biases. Implicit biases affect our interactions and the way we view each other. A bias that can be so strong they can conflict the way we express our beliefs and even the beliefs we have about ourselves. A bias like this causes limitations to inclusivity, job hiring, and media representation within the industry. Implicit biases are unconscious, strongly held discriminatory beliefs about a certain group that most researchers say all humans hold. For example, people tend to associate women more with the home than the workplace. In the late 17th and 18th century, the reality for many women was to tend to the garden, cook, clean, care for the children, and make sure that their husband's needs were met. I believe this is where the implicit bias in these sports comes from. There's a belief that women weren't as athletic as men, that women had more emotional strength, and that men had more physical strength. This led to another belief that certain sports that were classified unsuitable for women, specifically the ones that were categorized as high risk. Whether you would like to recognize it or not, I can almost for certain say that we've all had a thought where we thought, oh my god, she was really good for a girl, or holy moly, I hope she doesn't get hurt trying that. I myself know I have had this thought. Even if this is just a thought you have, most women get comments like this all the time that affect the way they feel. They feel isolated and looked at differently just because of their gender. A good example of the way implicit biases can affect the way we interact with the world around us was in a study done at Big Sky. Many women expressed that they worked very hard for their level 2 certification to coach harder level classes, but were constantly being put in the more mentally and emotionally harder classes, which included young kids or people who were new to the sport, when the male participants were always being put in the physically harder challenges. Both parties had the same level of certification and the same amount of experience. This shows us back to how women are looked at with different competence than men, even with the same qualifications. This is a great example of an implicit bias and how they can affect the way we interact with the world around us. I even bet that the person scheduling these lessons was unaware of the bias they held and was just subconsciously putting women in the more mentally harder challenges because they could handle it better than the men. I personally haven't experienced a bias like this, but I believe that it's just because I'm from a small town and I haven't had much lifetime to go put myself out there like these women. We need to change the mental models of individuals. We need to look at the biases we hold as human beings and see how they are affecting the way we interact with the world around us. We as humans are one of our biggest limitations when it comes to gender inequality. The fear of judgment is what holds us back from making a stand in what we believe in. We're always told to be the change, but the stress and anxiety that comes with it is not talked about. There's so many different aspects of anxiety and stress that can go into this. Is what I'm doing actually making a change? Do I belong here? What are others thinking? In a thesis paper researching gender equality in ski schools, female instructors express feelings of intimidation, self-doubt, and unfair judgment much more than male participants. Given this increased level of self-doubt, it is that much harder for women to lead the change in inequality, because as for putting one's neck out, it requires a foundation and a firm belief and confidence that you belong. This level of anxiety also can impact one's ability to perform, and therefore just add another level to stress over. I hope I've created some level of anxiety for you in the last minute, because this is what most women experience within 2 minutes, or at least what I experienced within 2 minutes of being on the ski mountain. The success of gender equality relies on changing the mental models of individuals. This applies to the psychological aspects of our limitations. It will come with time, however, changing our internal belief system, for example, questioning your belonging, which is a normal thing, needs to be changed, because who is to define that you don't belong? That is within an individual to define for themselves. Social structure is the way a society or a group is organized based off of relationships and patterns. For example, when you walk into a store like Target, the clothes are separated by gender, which defines how society believes genders should dress. Sports can be seen as a social structure to help shape one's identity. Dressing to the part, engaging in aggressive behavior, and adapting to a specific speech all impact the identity of a skier or a snowboarder, which, if done well, will help the individual gain respect in the community. Male participants often engage in social practices that construct these sports as masculine, such as dressing like a gangster or engaging in aggressive behavior. All these characteristics can fall into an implicit bias of a social construct from the past that separates men and women. Because of this, it makes it that much easier for men to excel in these sports when portraying these characteristics. It's interesting because this is something I've personally really experienced. I've experienced it within myself and within the community around me. It is easy to fall into the culture of aggressive behaviors in a certain style when the community is high pressure and you want to fit in. I myself have done this. I've noticed when snowboarding in the terrain park that the women who dress and act as if they belong get more attention and better attitudes. However, the women who dress with a more feminine style and lack perceived competence get less talked to and judgy looks. An article based out of New Zealand researching females negotiating their place in the snow found that women in leadership face a choice between maintaining a more feminine style and lacking perceived competence, or a more masculine style and being respected but not liked in the community. While it might be seen as an element of progress that women have gotten entry into these sports and have been embracing this new style, they have to do so by conforming to a masculine aesthetic. And the women who still want to embrace their femininity have a hard time gaining respect. Women are paving the way for a promising future as they assert their presence in competitions, the backcountry, and mountains across the globe. Yet, women are still unequally represented in the media. People spend time laminating about the industry shrinking, but the women's market is a huge opportunity for growth. Unfortunately, in most media representation, women have been reduced to aesthetics. For example, in most photo shoots, women are just pictures of them are just taken of them standing in their clothes, in their gear, looking pretty, and not actually participating in their sport. Cardona Alpine Resort in New Zealand did a self-audit that discovered only 29% of their content featured women in any way, and only 15% of that footage was of women actually skiing or snowboarding and participating in their sport. When a woman gets a chance to participate in a movie part, she is usually paired with a man to balance out her segment. However, men are constantly getting their own segments and getting their own movies. This is something that I struggle to wrap my head around because I can't actually find any good reasoning behind it. Because what's the point in that? Why can't we look at women with their own qualities? Now, going back to the social construct of females having to balance their femininity and masculinity, it strongly impacts their media popularity. Female athletes have to meet higher standards of physical appearance in their media because their media success depends on balancing athleticism with feminism. Further advertising often represents women as sex objects. A fascinating example of this is a professional skier named Grace, who is on the right side over there. Grace is a beautiful and talented woman who portrays that in her social media and her skiing videos. She is sponsored by Monster and OM3P. These companies were very quick to sign her as a sponsor. When there are many women out there who are just as talented, or even more so, who have worked very hard to get credibility in these sports. It is a possibility because of the way Grace portrays herself in her social media and on her Instagram that these sponsors were quicker to recognize her and know she will be respected because of tending to the male gaze. I would also like to give an example of another woman who, is my inspiration and I believe a great face for this community. A professional snowboarder named Jill Perkins has worked very hard for her sponsorships and had to even reach out to be recognized. In an interview called The Bomb Hole, Jill talks about her experiences being a woman in these sports. She talked about how she would go out every day for almost 3 years making video cards hoping to get recognized, and it wasn't until 3 years later that she even reached out to this company Ride and asked for an internship. After working with them for 2 years was she offered a place on the team. But it doesn't stop there. Even after that, she worked very hard to be accepted into the community. Jill is an extremely talented woman who deserves the success she has gained and who is a great role model for women in these sports. Young girls must witness women being offered equal opportunity as it serves a positive and empowering source of joy, confidence, and motivation. If it is only men who ever get the spotlight, how will women get inspired or get the confidence to ski or snowboard? I guarantee if we got an equal amount of representation, there would be an equal amount of women in these sports. Women have been fighting for equal representation since the origin of these sports. Because of its aggressive behavior and high-pressure community, this industry has remained largely male-dominated. We all hold an implicit bias, whether we want to recognize it or not. We all deal with social challenges and psychological battles that impact the way we interact with the world around us. To see a real change in the community and a rise in equal representation by women, I argue women need to make a name for themselves and rebrand the culture that caters to their own identity. Men in the community need to be awakened to the reality that women can ski and snowboard, perhaps in their own ways not defined by men, and that they have their own talents and styles to bring to the sport. Organizations, ski resorts, and companies need to work from a CEO level to start making more of a space for women. Companies need to start working in the female market as it is the fastest growing part of the industry. Organizations need all-women lessons and workshops, and ski resorts need all-women classes. We still need to work on changing the psychological aspects of our limitations so that we can make a more welcoming community for women in the future. Therefore, to see a change in the skiing and snowboarding community and a rise in equal representation, I argue there needs to be a rebrand in the culture and all the aspects that define that culture. The success of gender equality relies on changing the mental models of individuals. This applies to the psychological aspects of our limitations. Women need to be represented in all aspects of this sport because they are the industry's future. Thank you.